think on this deal, the client actually exchanged on £1.
Yeah, that's his speciality. He loves that pound.
He loves that pound, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's done quite a few now.
So he's all he had to come up with was that one, well, £2.
Yeah,
and the bill costs.
So sometimes these deals are literally £1 in or very little. Some are like you also then need the refurb money. So he needed the refurb money, but off the top of my head, it wasn't a massive amount. I think it was around, let's call it 10k a block. 10k a flat, 4 in each. So that's about 80k. I think it was somewhere between 60 and 80k he spent on it. Welcome to the Property Business Accelerator podcast. And today I'm welcoming back Bruce Mannering from Bond Finance. And today we're going to talk not just about finance, but about creative deals and more in particular, exchange delayed completion. And Bruce and I have been working together for a long time. And I have done exchange delayed completion with the aid of Bruce. And also a lot of my mentees have done exchange delayed completion with the aid of Bruce. Now, not many brokers are able to do this. And that's why it's been great to have Bruce come along today to explain some of the concepts around exchange delayed completion, which is all about deal structure. It's all about finding the right deal. But more importantly, it's the person behind the deal that generally allows this to make happen. And it's that relationship you can build between the seller and the buyer. And you actually remove a lot of the barriers because someone is keen to sell, someone is keen to buy. And it's all about the mechanism that you do that under without requiring a massive deposit. And that is one of the key things why a lot of people are really excited about this concept. So Bruce, can you tell me a little bit more about how people go about this exchange delayed completion concept?
Sure. Every deal I've done, it seems to be a retiring landlord wanting to get rid of a property and having problems selling it, and it hangs around on the market. And every landlord, retiring landlord, just wants to get the deal done, and it's just got this mental thing in the head, let's get exchanged, and then I definitely will be completing. So the key is to get a line in the sand of what the property is currently, and all the deals where there's a minimum deposit going in or no deposit going in, they're doing some refurbs or they're splitting them up. They're changing something to get the higher end GDV. And then when you come to purchase the property, we're looking to complete on the uplifted value, not the purchase price. Now, every single bank in this country only completes on the purchase price or value, whatever the lower is. So how do we go about that? Now, I'm lucky enough, we lend out our own money as well as brokers, and I've got a bridging company called BDK. And we are registered with a lot of the panelled valuers out there, one particular being on VAS. And VAS are also on the panel of HTB in Shawbrook. So what we get agreed with HDB and Shawbrook is that BDK instructs the valuation. We get a line in the sand where it is. The valuer also gives us an NGDV. We then take that valuation, send it to Shawbrook, and ask them, right, this is the plan of action. Are you going to give us permission in 6 to 9 months' time to complete on the NGDV? So it's all agreed up front. And once we've got that sheet of paper, the client then exchanges. They get the works done, and hopefully there's a high enough uplift in value that it's a no money down deal, which we've done a few times, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. So there's some key principles there that I'd like to pull out, which is obviously you've got a variation between what you're actually buying it for and what the bank is, the value that the bank is going to lend against. Obviously, they love to see some refurbs and uplifts or something different to allow that value. But one of the critical things is the amount of time from agreeing the purchase, getting the purchase in, and when you actually complete. And as you said, 6 to 9 months. In actual fact, a lot of the deals that kind of a lot of my mentees do a little bit longer than that, because the bigger the variation in time, obviously the more distance you're putting yourself between that sort of agreed price and the new price. And I think something I drum home into everybody I talk to about this is that you've got to have some kind of like why is there going to be a difference in value? You can't rely on just the market. You've got to have something. And I do hark back to one of my deals where you always said, Mike, what are you actually doing to this property? What are you doing to this property to actually make it work?
Give me some receipts. Give me some receipts.
I want some receipts. So we'll get into that deal more specifically soon. But I think that is a great concept. And in actual fact, I think when I first came with the deal that I had this idea of doing on, I said to you, can we just extend, complete on value because it's over the 6-month rule. Lots of property investors know the 6-month rule. It's going to be beyond 6 months. Can we complete on purchase? And you were like, oh, I'm not sure about this. Let's go and talk to
Shawbrook at
that point in time. So what did you do? So I came to you knocking on your door saying, Bruce, this concept's here. Yeah. Can we do this? And you went, let me go and talk to Shawbrook. So I'll hand over to you to tell the story.
So we've got a very good relationship with lots of banks, one being Shawbrook. So we picked up the phone, spoke to the head underwriter at Shawbrook Bank. And then he went away and spoke to head of risk. And they all had a little huddle. We went through the deal itself, what the parameters are and stuff like that. And I've actually still got that email from back in 2017, I think, from the head underwriter saying, yes, we agreed. If you do this, if you do that, if you do this, we will complete on the OMV value,
the open market value.
The open market value, not the purchase price.
Yeah, you should put that in a frame, shouldn't you? Really?
Yeah, it was.
Because that was the new underwriting policy. And I think that's where people need to understand that, you've got to work with a decent broker who actually has that relationship because, a lot of these deals get more, the more complex you get, the more difficult it is to communicate the story. And I always tell everybody it's the story that you portray makes the life easier. And I think one of the things that Bond's really good at is actually telling that story to the broker so they fully understand it, they're clear and in the picture, and therefore it's far easier to buy into those kind of concepts. And you know what I'm like. I love pushing the edges of the boundaries and making you go off and try and do things. And I think that's one of the key things. And I think, we'll get into this a bit later on in the podcast as well, is like, I also get really frustrated with people who are like, oh, but these rates are more expensive in this. And it's like, no. It's about getting the deal done. Don't worry about the rates. Actually, when you're doing a £1 million, multi-million pound deal, you're not putting much money in, whether it's 1% higher, 1% lower, or 2% higher, 2% lower, really makes no difference.
Yep.
You're going to make hundreds of thousands of pounds out of this. You're going to make tens of thousands of pounds of cash flow every month. It's like, what are you thinking about?
Yeah, exactly. Spot on. It's getting the deal done and actually securing the property. And getting that into your portfolio and growing your portfolio. You can always remortgage at a later time, maybe to more of a retail type lender.
That's right.
2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line. But get the deal done, get the cash flow. That's the key. And worry about the rates later.
Yeah. So I'd like to then touch on another deal.
Okay.
And this deal, again, the same similar concept of exchange delayed completion.
Yep.
And this deal was, again, one of my mentees working with yourself to execute. So I think I put the idea in his head of like, well, look, you've got a couple of blocks here, because he comes and talks to me about the deals, and then we structure the deals together. Again, a landlord who was wanting to exit. He had a lot of stuff to exit. And it's interesting, you find a landlord who wants to exit. They might have quite a few properties, a bit like the previous example we said. Quite a few properties they want to exit. Anyway, there were 2 blocks, and he sourced them, and he was like, what do I do? How do I do this? 2 blocks. They weren't next door to each other. I think there was a block in between as well.
They were close, but not.
But it was 4 flats in each block.
Yep.
And he was like, what do we do? And I said, look, you've got a good discount in this. You don't need to put lots of money in up front if you can talk to them, because this deal works without having loads of interest costs going onto short-term finance, onto long-term finance, and all of these things that can then erode a lot of the margin that you get in a deal. And that's why one of the great things around exchange delayed completion is it can be quite a lot cheaper on the old interest front.
Yeah, it's you are the money you're saving on the bridging is so much more than an extra 1% cheaper at the back end. People don't realise that. Plus, cash is king. You don't need to put so much money in.
I think, as a property investor, for me, it's like, where am I going to get the deposit from? Because if you're moving at pace and doing a lot of deals, obviously you don't always have loads of money. And also for a lot of people out there, they say, go and raise the money, go and do this. Well, that's one less task off your job sheet. Yeah. So therefore, you can go in and do far more deals. You can accelerate your portfolio growth really rapidly. Yes, there are obviously some risks along with this because we've got a delay between the exchange and completion, and you are obliged to buy at the end of it.
Correct, but what we're doing, we're mitigating as much risk as possible by getting 2 valuations done and being able to instruct a vast valuation via my bridging company is fantastic, and then we get it all pre-agreed. So before you exchange, we get it all pre-agreed with the lender.
So let's go through this example with the valuations that you and Toby put in. So do you want to go through what you actually did with this scenario?
Yeah, I think the blocks were purchase price about 450 for 2, ballpark.
Yeah, I think they were a little. I think they were a little bit more than that.
Sort of each one was 450.
That was the end values. That was the end values because we ended up around 900k, but I think they were bought for around 600k, about 300k each.
Yeah.
But I really wanted to more talk about the process that you went through because you got some valuers to go in. My understanding is you got some valuers to go in.
Yep.
And they were like, and obviously brief Shawbrook because this was a Shawbrook deal. Do you want to go through?
So basically, we got the first set of valuers round to value the property. We give them a valuation pack explaining what's going to go on. That includes the proposed purchase price, a schedule of works. It can also include a mood board. So the sort of thing, the sort of concept you're going for.
You're getting all frilly there, Bruce.
I am getting a bit frilly, aren't I? And then they gave comparables of what they thought the end values were going to be for the flats, and also market rent for each of the flats as well. And that basically is your valuation pack. And you give that to the valuer, you send it over to the valuer before he actually sees the property. Therefore, he's got things in the back of his head. He's sort of thinking. You're
planting seeds in his head. And this is, have you ever seen is it Durham Brown or whatever? An old series that he used to do, play mind games, and he would predict what people would do, and then he'd show you what they were. And it was like, well, I asked you, to pick an animal, and it was like a bear. I remember this one about a bear, and it was like, why did he do a bear? And it was like, because he'd put on the way to the studio, this guy that they knew he was going to do, loads of pictures of bears. There was like billboards, there was all these references. Yeah. And funnily enough, when he said pick a furry animal, it was like bear. Yeah. And he knew it. And it was because it had all been planted along the way. So that is how you get evaluation. Start the seeds early, start that kind of sowing the seeds. And the good thing about also commercial valuations is it's not unusual to be sending pre-packs to a valuer. So like if it's just a normal valuation, a buy-to-let valuation, they'll be like, what the hell are you on about? Or don't talk to me about, they don't want to interact with you at all. But a commercial valuation, which you pay a lot more money for, obviously that is, you can start having that interaction with them and they're welcoming information quite often. And the more you do, the better it is. And in actual fact, I had one of my mentees, we were like, right, we need this valuation. And we looked at doing that valuation in several different ways. So like look at comparables on bricks and mortar basis. Let's look at yield values. Let's look at all these different things that came to a figure that meant that the valuer should value at that thing. So we do put a lot of thought and effort into the valuation. So obviously you went in, so you made sure that the guy got that valuation in. So we obviously told Shawbrook that the purchase price.
We told them the purchase price. We gave them the plan. We sent them the valuation, including who the client is, who was an existing client of the bank. We get sign off each time. We get sign off from the bank that they are going to allow this to go on the OMV, not the purchase price.
Yes.
Once again, mitigating risk. He got the works done. We then got the same valuer back to say, right, I've now done the works. Here's my schedule of costs. I actually spend a little bit more, a little bit less, and then we get the end valuation. Then we submit, then we go to offer, and then complete. I think on this deal, the client actually exchanged on £1.
Yeah, that's his speciality. He loves that pound.
He loves that pound, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's done quite a few now.
So he's all he had to come up with was that one, well, £2.
Yeah,
and the bill costs.
So sometimes these deals are literally £1 in or very little. Some are like, you also then need the refurb money. So he needed the refurb money, but off the top of my head, it wasn't a massive amount. I think it was around, let's call it 10k a block. 10k a flat, 4 in each. So that's about 80k. I think it was somewhere between 60 and 80k he spent on it.
And then when he completed, he actually completed on 109%.
That's right.
Of the purchase price.
Yeah, so he got the lending was bigger than the original purchase price. Yeah. So again, he recycled a lot of his money. He took control. So the main things that I also want to bring up is like, what made this work is obviously we had a landlord who was happy with that. He was like, I can wait for my money. I don't need it now. A retiring landlord who's done well out of property has the money in his bank account, as well as he's kind of getting rid of these properties to just have less hassle. But so therefore he went, right, and I say this to guys, like, take the money, so exchange, and start collecting the rent. Because you're in control. Get control of the building, and also, if we're going to do some refurbs, as in this case, you need to be able to do the refurbs between exchange and completion. Lots of different deals you can do that kind of thing on. So let's do that. But if you're then adding the value, let's complete on value. So he went in and did the refurb. He had to move people out, and quite often, again, the reason people go, this deal doesn't work. This deal doesn't work. It's because landlords get a bit lazy in the end, and they haven't put up the rents. So he put up the rent. He did these refurbs, put up the rents. Helps all the valuation, and as you said, there was a story. So when they came back, now I remember he had 2 different valuers actually for each block, because he was mitigating risk between the 2 in case he got a bad valuation and it would only be on 1 block and not 2. And one of the valuers was like a bit picky, and they had a list, and he'd left a couple of things off, and he was like, "Oh, you've left a couple of things off. I can't give you the valuation that we wanted." Yeah. So he then had to go and get that done and come back again. I think
that's it. It was a bit frustrating. It added another 2-3 weeks.
I think it was a bit more. Yeah, it added quite a bit of time to it, but the way he'd structured the deal with the vendor was very clever, and so that he wasn't penalised if there was overrun from the original agreement. He actually he'd come up with what he'd done is mitigated all that risk. If there was a problem, he'd do this, and he had to pay it. So there was a bigger kind of amount he had to pay to the landlord, because he was paying money along, because he was collecting the rent and paying it, so the landlord wasn't losing out until the completion. Now, there's lots of different mechanisms between exchange and delayed completion. And I've been involved in lots now, and Bruce has been involved in lots, and I would say each one has a slight unique element to it, that so the structure really comes down to how do you approach it with the landlord? What is the key things that they want? What is it that motivates their boat? What can you give them that doesn't cost you anything, that is going to make them really excited to do this deal? And what can you take from them that doesn't cost them anything, that's going to really help you do the deal?
Spot on.
And that is what you've got to do. And I think a lot of people don't sort of understand that. And the number of times I've been to people, and actually people have proposed similar things to what I proposed, but they've just not got it away, because they're just blunt. They're just like, "Oh, we'll do this. Are you up for that?" And the guy goes, "Well, no, we're not doing that." But you kind of, it's more subtle than that. It's much more subtle than that. And I think
you need to get to know the landlord. All the deals have done, the buyer has befriended the landlord, or have known the landlord for some time, and built up a bit of trust.
Yeah. So we have a phrase in my mentoring group. We have a phrase for this, is we call it the cup of tea method.
Okay.
The cup of tea method. Go and have a cup of tea, because so many things can be solved over a cup of tea.
Yeah.
Quite often the agent is sitting in the room, and you've briefed the agent not to say too much, but then you've actually spoken to them. And this is what, I even had a conversation. I think it was yesterday I had a conversation with someone who was thinking of joining my mentorship program. And he was like, but why would a landlord do this? And then I reeled off loads of reasons, a lot of reasons that I've come across, done and resolved. And he was like, yeah, I can see that. Oh, by the way, I've got this. There's this £4 million deal that I saw. So it does spark ideas in people, but you need to know how to present it, you need to know how to action it, and you need to go through a due process, and you need to mitigate your risks, and you need to use a broker who knows what they're doing, because, I find so many people go to the wrong place, and there aren't many people out there, as you said earlier, that knows how to structure all this stuff.